Just after dawn on December 26, 1996, Boulder, Colorado lay silent beneath a fresh blanket of snow. Christmas decorations still glimmered in front yards, and the world stirred slowly from its holiday haze. Inside the stately Ramsey residence at 755 15th Street, however, that quiet was shattered at exactly 5:52 a.m. when Patsy Ramsey's voice, calm, measured, eerily composed, pierced the pre-dawn stillness. "We have a kidnapping," she told the 911 operator, prioritizing mention of a 3-page ransom note over her missing daughter. That note, typed on house stationery, demanded $118,000, the exact amount of John Ramsey's Christmas bonus, and warned the family not to call police. Yet Patsy called immediately, and no call ever came from a stranger to negotiate. Hours passed in tense anticipation until John Ramsey, with family friend Fleet White at his side, descended into the basement wine cellar and found 6-year-old JonBenét's lifeless body. Her mouth was sealed with duct tape, her wrists bound with nylon cord, and a paintbrush handle garrote still wrapped around her neck. She lay on a cold concrete floor under a white blanket, as if positioned for maximum horror. In a moment captured on sketchpad later by police artists, John picked up his daughter and carried her upstairs to the Christmas tree, unknowingly destroying fragile fibers and latent fingerprints with the slightest shift of her body. By midday, crime scene tape fluttered in a bitter wind, but it was too late. Friends, neighbors, and even police officers had roamed freely through living rooms and hallways, exchanging pleasantries and sipping coffee. The living room carpet, once pristine, now bore muddy footprints. The banister where the ransom note had rested lay buffed by scrutiny. Early investigative missteps combined with a media blitz, live camera feeds, talk show panels, and sensational headlines turned America from collective grief into frenzied obsession. A perfect family under scrutiny. To understand why suspicion zeroed in on those inside the house, we must first meet the Ramseys. JonBenét Ramsey, born in Lincoln, Nebraska in 1943, was the epitome of Midwestern discipline. Son of a decorated World War II pilot, he graduated with a degree in electrical engineering in 1966 and later earned an MBA. A Naval Civil Engineer Corps officer in the Philippines, he returned home with a passion for aviation and a mission in technology. By 1989, he founded Advanced Product Group. When it merged with 2 firms to create Access Graphics, he helmed a billion-dollar enterprise that by 1996 was a Lockheed Martin subsidiary. The Boulder Chamber of Commerce named him Entrepreneur of the Year that same December, sealing his image as a community pillar. Patsy Ramsey, his second wife, had been Miss West Virginia in 1977. Her southern charm and pageant savvy complemented John's corporate prowess. Together, their family consisted of 3 older children from John's first marriage, Elizabeth, Melinda, and John Andrew, and 2 youngsters with Patsy, Burke, 9, and JonBenét, 6. Their 7,000 square-foot mansion, located minutes from the university and cultural heartbeat of Boulder, was a showpiece. Sweeping staircases, stained glass windows, and a wraparound deck overlooking the Rockies. Church socials at St. John's Episcopal, charity galas, and children's beauty pageants filled their social calendar. To outsiders, they were the American dream wrapped in tinsel and privilege. Yet on that December morning, calm facades cracked. Investigators noted Patsy's refusal to say, "my daughter," when describing the kidnapping, using "we" instead. She never once screamed or sobbed. Instead, her tone was oddly courteous. "Please, yes, thank you," multiple times. When the call ended, a hidden microphone picked up what sounded like Patsy, John, and a child whispering heated exchanges, an unsettling chorus suggesting secrets behind closed doors. The ransom note, scripted to deceive. The ransom note itself was a forensic enigma. Over 370 words across 2.5 pages, it contained stage directions and theatrical threats more befitting an action film than a desperate abduction. Lines like, "Don't grow a brain, John," and obscure references to a foreign faction borrowed language from popular 1990s movies. Behavioral analysts called it maternal in tone. The FBI described it as not consistent with genuine kidnapper communications. Handwriting examiners excluded John and Burke but could not definitively eliminate Patsy, whose known correspondence shared peculiar turns of phrase. Crucially, the note demanded $118,000, a fact unlikely known to any stranger. Yet no second note, no phone call, no hint the kidnappers intended to recover a single dime. All these anomalies pointed investigators back inside the house, not beyond its snow-laden gates. Crime scene contamination, friends and fumbles. Protocol dictates lockdown. Secure entrances, restrict access, preserve evidence. But at the Ramsey home, protocol cracked under the weight of concern and confusion. Family friends, church members, even uniformed officers moved through the rooms as coffee and reassurance passed hands. The unopened basement door, through which the ransom note writer must have climbed, stood disturbed when police finally stepped through. Boots scuffed the carpet beside where JonBenét lay later. DNA and fibers, once vital clues, were irretrievably lost, tainted or erased by each curious footstep. This contamination made every subsequent forensic test subject to challenge. When the first round of DNA tests in late 1996 revealed male profiles on JonBenét's clothing, experts cautioned the samples might reflect casual contact rather than incriminating evidence. In 2008, touch DNA retesting again confirmed an unidentified male presence, prompting District Attorney Mary Lacey to exonerate the Ramseys. But when next-generation sequencing in 2016 showed multiple male contributors, the notion of a single lone intruder dissolved into murky complexity. Burke Ramsey, a boy in the eye of the storm. At 9 years old, Burke Ramsey was perhaps the most controversial figure. When asked to recall his morning routine, he claimed to have slept through the commotion and later eaten breakfast at ease. His parents and police reports corroborated his solitude. Yet a bowl of pineapple and milk bearing his fingerprints sat in the kitchen. Pineapple partially digested in JonBenét's stomach. Had Burke given his sister a midnight snack? Could an accidental altercation over fruit have triggered tragedy? Behavioral experts noted his later on-camera smiles and unemotional tone, traits some deemed chilling, though child psychologists countered that shock can manifest as emotional detachment. The flashlight theory posited that a black maglite found precisely matching the force needed for JonBenét's skull fracture belonged to Burke. Others argued a child of 9 could not so precisely wield such a weapon. His childhood, stolen by suspicion, became a living indictment never tested in court. Patsy Ramsey, image versus impulse. Patsy's reputation for meticulous image management fed early theories of staging. In the days before Christmas, her housekeeper testified, she grew erratic, moody at minor disagreements, particularly about JonBenét's pageant attire. The ransom note paper came from her notepad, the pen from her desk, the paintbrush for the garrote from her art supplies. She insisted she discovered the note before checking on her daughter. She refused to submit handwriting samples. She allowed no separate police interviews. Legal maneuverings to adjust grand jury secrecy laws only fueled speculation. Critics suggested a mother's panic would not yield a polished note or a cleaned and redressed body wrapped in a laundered blanket, actions seemingly more about controlling narrative than expressing grief. John Ramsey, composure or calculation? John's role remains equally enigmatic. He orchestrated the early cleanup, inviting friends in, while the house was still an active crime scene. When prompted by Detective Art, he ventured into the basement, discovered the body in minutes, and carried JonBenét upstairs, undoing forensic value of blood spatter, Nielsen hair samples, and duct tape impressions. His composed demeanor drew praise and suspicion in equal measure. He later admitted to shattering a basement window months earlier to regain entry when locked out, a window staged as intruder entry beneath a placed suitcase. His abrupt attempt to book an Atlanta flight, citing an urgent meeting mere days after his daughter's death, hinted at panic or the desire to escape scrutiny. Rumors of missing CCTV footage from the small private airport where he kept his plane suggested potential influence or evidence suppression. Alternative suspects, Oliva, Helgoth, and beyond. Not every theory pointed inward. Known Boulder sex offender Gary Oliva was arrested in the early 2000s carrying a photograph of JonBenét in his backpack. In prison, he penned letters professing obsession. Michael Helgoth, an auto salvage worker with ties to criminal associates, died under suspicious circumstances after allegedly boasting of a big job at Christmas 1996. Boot prints matching Helgoth's rare footwear surfaced near the body, stun gun marks on JonBenét's skin, recreated in L. Smith's infamous raw pork experiment, matched equipment found among Helgoth's possessions. Yet police could never secure enough evidence for indictment. Forensic advances and frustrations. Over 25 years, investigators tested and retested more than 500 pieces of evidence, conducted 1,000 interviews, and chased 20,000 leads. Techniques evolved from basic serology to PCR amplification to next-generation sequencing and forensic genealogy, tools that cracked the Golden State Killer decades later. But in a scene so compromised, many forensic scientists warned that DNA could rule out suspects but rarely prove guilt. Secondary transfer, cross-contamination, and environmental degradation meant that each new result invited fresh skepticism. The once promised silver bullet of DNA became a double-edged sword, both exonerating and obscuring, deepening confusion instead of delivering closure. Psychological profiles, family versus predator. FBI criminal profiler John Douglas dissected the crime's behavioral signature: no signs of rushed rage or family vendetta, methodical planning, staging, and cleanup. A predator fixated from afar, obsessed with power and control, he concluded, rather than a relative killing in the heat of domestic conflict. Yet psychologists also noted how grief can mimic calculation, how shock can appear as composure, and how a family's public performance can mask private despair. The Ramseys embodied this tension: too perfect to blame, too inconsistent to fully trust. The human toll. In 2006, Patsy's death from ovarian cancer closed a chapter of public scrutiny but deepened the family's private agony. John, already carrying the 1992 loss of daughter Elizabeth, remarried in 2011 and authored The Other Side of Suffering in 2012, a memoir of grief, resilience, and advocacy. He championed victims' rights, cold case legislation in Colorado, 2013, and forensic genealogy applications. Yet he never abandoned the central plea: do you still have the evidence? Meanwhile, Burke grew into adulthood under a relentless microscope. With no legal charges, he nonetheless inherited a life sentence of suspicion. Every interview dissected, every social media mention a fresh accusation. He became, in the public mind, guilty by proximity, a tragic casualty of unsolved tragedy. Lessons learned and the path forward. The JonBenét Ramsey case reshaped law enforcement. Strict lockdown procedures, controlled scene access, forensic-aware training, and interagency cooperation became standard reforms spurred by this disaster. The embrace of forensic genealogy, now solving decades-old cold cases, traces its roots to the DNA frustrations in Boulder. The case stands as both cautionary tale and impetus for scientific innovation. An unfinished story. Yet after nearly 3 decades, 28 years of fractured leads, competing theories, and lingering doubt, the central question remains unanswered. Who killed JonBenét Ramsey? Was it a disturbed intruder, a panicked family member, or a complex tangle of both? The sole constant is the unidentified DNA thread snaking through the case files. Modern genealogy could link it to a living person, if only the evidence is revisited with the same urgency that once chased hot headlines. Final reflection. This story is more than a puzzle. It is a mirror reflecting our hunger for certainty, our readiness to judge, and our failure to cherish nuance. It warns us that grief can be vilified as guilt, panic misread as premeditation, and love mistaken for performance. Above all, it teaches that justice demands humility, discipline, and relentless curiosity, even when truth lies buried beneath layers of lies, noise, and silence. If this investigation moved you, please like and subscribe for more deep dive true crime documentaries. Hit the notification bell to stay informed. And now, we turn to you. What do you believe happened that night in Boulder? Share your theories below. Because after 28 years of lies, it's time to let the real truth finally come out.